Okay, let's begin with the Hail Mary, shall we? Okay, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death, amen. Holy Mary, our hope, handmaid of the Lord, pray for us. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Adel, and I am was a alumni. I am an alumni of SMU, and I have been. If you see, I think they wrote me as like member of Opus Dei, and I am a member of Opus Dei, and we are like a prelature for lay people. So it's really quite interesting that I met Opus Dei when I was on exchange in Spain, and Opus Dei came from Spain. So I attended the talks there in Spanish, and I didn't understand anything, but I met really incredible people who would journey with me along the way, and I felt this was what I was called to live my life in this vocation in Opus Dei, because the mission of Opus Dei, to put it really plainly, is to help all of us live our daily lives in holiness. So imagine if a priest is he lives his life in holiness by celebrating Mass, right? Offering the sacrifice on the altar. Then us as students, as office workers, as moms, where we work, that's our altar of sacrifice. So if you're an office person, like administrative person, and you have a desk, that is your altar of sacrifice. Your work is what you offer to God. Therefore, all these things you do, you have to do it without blemish. You cannot cut corners. And I think this is something that has helped me in my daily life. I'm a sales manager. I manage an account. I manage all the accounts for an IT firm. And so sometimes you are doing work outside of the office. Your boss doesn't see you. So it's very easy to, what they call it, like to just take a chill pill and don't work. So, but to understand that what I work is constantly offered up to God, I cannot cut myself too much slack as well and take advantage of this freedom, right? So yeah, I think that's what Opus Dei is about. If you don't know, you can go online and search for us. Just don't go to those like Da Vinci Code website lah, The Da Vinci Code was really very strange, but we're really nothing like what Dan Brown has written. I am not an albino monk, right? So yes. So okay. Today we're talking about. Can you see? We're talking about the letter written by John Paul II in 1988. Who was born after 1988? Well, most of you. I'm 1986, so I was a toddler. But okay, and it's very revolutionary, and I really hope you enjoy this. Should I use this or should I not? Oh, okay. Okay, so, but first, before we begin, I would really like to manage your expectations with regards to this letter if you have not already read it. And, when we talk about dignity of women, you're just thinking like, oh, girl power, like, wow, what a force we are. It's true. And the thing is, when I read this for the first time, I was pretty shocked that it was not just talking about women. It talked about us as a whole and our role as women together with men. Okay, so it's nothing, you can't expect like everything is, oh, girl, woman all the way, and you don't mention men at all. So one thing I need you now to at least begin to unlearn the narrative of the secular world, okay, where they talk about, great with the Me Too movement, but it's not to tear men apart. Sometimes it goes to beyond the extent where it becomes like a conflict, men versus women, but it's not. So this letter is very much complementary, how women complement men and our strength in that, and we really need to recognize that. And the letter begins, these are all the different topics within the letter, and we'll try to cover it as much as we can today, okay? But again, really, it's just a teaser, and I really encourage you in your communities, with your friends and your family, to read this passage, because it's very, very well written. And the letter begins with John Paul II quoting this message to women, written even before 1988, 1965, December 8th. It says, "The hour is coming, in fact, when the vocation of woman is being acknowledged in its fullness, the hour in which women acquire in the world an influence, an effect, and a power never before achieved. That is why, at this moment, when the human race is undergoing so deep a transformation, women imbued with the spirit of the gospel can do so much aid to humanity in not falling." So again, women imbued with the spirit of the gospel. I'm assuming that's all of us here, okay? We can do so much to aid humanity in not falling. Okay, so this is a message. How many years? How old is Singapore? 56, there, right? 1965. So this is a really old message that is still so alive right now. And I think it's really incredible how the church, the fathers of the church, the popes, they wrote, oh, hey, Mama. I just touched it. I mean, they wrote with such foresight, you know? They know. It wasn't as if like they're trapped in their beautiful palace and don't know anything about us. So, and then the letter next moves on to, oh, it's like that, okay. Quoting Galatians 4:4, "God sent forth his son, born of a woman." And we realize that the letters to Galatians was written by who? St. Paul. St. Paul did not write the name Mary, like, oh, God sent forth his son born of Mary, right? But he calls her woman. And this is really to establish this connection, a direct reference with the words of God in the book of Genesis, you know, where after the fall of Adam and Eve, and he said that the seed of the woman would crush the head. So God sent forth his son born of a woman. The seed of this woman will crush the head of the serpent. And it's really to state that this woman, Our Lady, Mother Mary, is present in the central event of the entire salvation history, which marks the fullness of time. And this event is realized in her and through her. So this letter spends a great deal talking about Our Lady. I mean, we really cannot talk about her enough, actually. She's really incredible, isn't it? So, and how God used her to display his plans for us women, and how it should be for us to fulfill his will through her example. And I'm not saying like, oh, we have to be immaculately conceived, we have to wait for Holy Spirit to tell us to bear us a son. No. But in her example of how she lived in union with Christ, and that her heart lived for God. And that's what we need to do the same as her. And we can see this reflected in the episode of the Annunciation. And we can only understand the Annunciation fully if we place the whole conversation between Angel and Mary in the context of this word, full of grace. And when he called her full of grace, that's the example of what we need to aspire to be full of grace. And the whole Annunciation dialogue reveals this dimension of the event, that grace never casts nature aside, or cancels out your nature. It isn't like God is a puppet master. It's not. But rather perfects your nature and brings it to a greater dignity. So this fullness of grace that was granted to Our Lady also signifies the fullness of God's plan of what is characteristic to us women and what is feminine. That is to be full of grace. Actually, grace is really something we need to constantly ask from God for. Example, if you go to confession, right, and you already say all the things, and you want to improve yourself, isn't it? I mean, that's the whole process of living, self-actualization, realization, and improving oneself. And I was told recently, like, oh, have you really, like, after confession, as you go about your day, you want to correct your mistake, ask for that grace constantly, even after confession, to go for it and to make the amends in your life and to be better versions of yourself and to live the will of God. I think this is really something we constantly keep asking from God, until maybe when we enter into his kingdom, we might be addressed as full of grace as well. Imagine that, how beautiful, isn't it? So, by considering the reality that a woman became the mother of God, it says a lot on the reflection on the dignity and vocation of women. And in anything we think, say, or do concerning the dignity and vocation of women, our thoughts, our hearts, our action cannot be detached from this. It must be understood that the dignity find its measure in union with God. So if you just want to talk about this whole Me Too movement, women's rights, it has to be in the light of God, especially for us, when we already know who is this God, isn't it? When it's not, then it is not complete, okay? And we will understand more to it later. So Mary is the most complete expression of this dignity and vocation because no human being, male or female, created in the image of God can in any way attain fulfillment apart from this image and likeness. So because we are created in image and likeness of God, if you want to drift away from that, you cannot fulfill your mission in life. Okay, so really what is it then to be in the image and likeness of God? Oh, sorry, I didn't show you this. So God, it says, in Genesis, God created man in image of himself. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. I keep repeating, right? So we hear this, but what exactly does it mean? Yes, it does refer to us as rational beings. We are not animals. We can make decisions. And I mean, a lot of people also say, oh, dogs are so smart, right? But actually, I think the part about being rational is we can choose to do very stupid things for people, for others, and animals don't really choose to do stupid things. They're instinctive. So a dog can be smart, they can learn tricks, and they can be very faithful and loyal, but it's very much instinctive. But we can choose not to be loyal as well, and I think that's what it means to be rational beings, and we are able to dominate other creatures in the visible world. So on top of that, being a person in the image and likeness of God then also involves us existing in a relationship in relation to the other I. This is a prelude to the self-revelation of the Holy Trinity, who is a living unity in the communion of the Father and the Son. So when men and women were created as a unity of two, in their common humanity, they are called to mirror this communion of love. Okay? And that's how it is like. Because we are created in the image and likeness of God, therefore, if this is the image and likeness of God, it needs to exist for one another. And not just side by side, but one for the other. And that is to mirror in the world the love of the Holy Trinity. Okay, so I thought that was pretty cool. So being a person means striving towards self-realization, that's what I've mentioned, which really can only be achieved through the sincere gift of self. We have to give of ourselves, which is why I think when Jesus said if you look for a life, you want to keep it, you lose it, but if you don't want it, you keep it. And exactly that's what he meant, that if we give of ourselves, we realize more what we can do, our potential, our talents. If we keep everything for ourselves and, just Netflix all day, I'm guilty of that. More like K-variety lah. But and then you don't end up giving of yourself, right? And thinking about other people. And then you get all paranoid, people, I have friends who are so, what do you call it? You keep thinking sore throat cancer. I'm having this. So it's really very important to look outside of ourselves, isn't it? Because we were made in the likeness of God and therefore can only find, it's supposed to go back to this slide. We can only find our purpose when we exist for others, okay? To become a gift of ourselves. And then, God became so amazing that he decided, my people, why y'all don't understand? That he decided to come as a man to show you, isn't it? So, and it's really very interesting because, it was very, very interesting because in his time, in the cultural context, the dignity of women is not even recognized, isn't it? They are just supposed to be kept at home.
I mean, like now with the current situation in Afghanistan, you can hear the cries and the I wouldn't say opposition, but the cry for help of women there, right? They're so afraid even of getting out of the house, and they do want to live back a normal life, but they can't. So back then, imagine that was the cultural context to a certain extent, right? And back then, there was no UN to help them, isn't it? So it was really very much quite an oppression in a way. And so when Jesus began talking to women, it was quite a shock to even his disciples, right? The they here was describing the apostles that they were shocked that he was talking with a woman. Where was this? It was at the well, the well of Jacob or something, right? Where he met the women, the Samaritan woman. And I'm not going to pick out all, I'm just picking out one that in this encyclical wrote the account of the woman caught in adultery. Jesus simply tell her not to sin again, right? He saved her from the condemnation and death even. Then he goes on in the recording of Matthew, he said that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So when you match these two together, when the men come and accuse this woman that she was caught red-handed, yes, it's true, she was caught red-handed. Then now he points out to the men, hey, you, when you start thinking of a woman lustfully in your heart, you have already committed adultery. What are you talking about? So, and each man must look within himself to see whether she, who was entrusted to him as a sister in humanity, as a spouse, or you don't even need to be a spouse, right? Just as a sister in humanity, has not become in his heart an object of adultery. To see whether or not she, who in different ways is the co-subject of his existence in the world, has not become for him an object of pleasure, of exploitation. And I think this is what we need to understand what he meant, that sometimes when we look at this, right, we just think like, oh, it's a thought that counts. Then we get scared, like, oh, I think dirty thoughts, oh my gosh, did, right? But really, the purpose of it is, have we objectified people when we need to see them that they were made in the image and likeness of God? Therefore, they are a person to be loved as well, even if they hurt us. But of course, I think we're not talking about abusive relationship here and you stay in that abusive relationship. I'm not talking about that. But it's just this idea that now with hookup culture and so casual relationships, we are all making use of one another. So even in your conversations with friends, when they talk about gay relationships, right? And they say like, so why can you all sleep around and we can't? I had a conversation with one of my gay friends. I was like, oh my God, bro, no. I can't even sleep around. What are you talking about? It's pretty consistent. And then they say, oh, why is the church such homophobic? I'm digressing a little bit here. Educate yourself with it and have more of these conversations to understand and to help everybody to understand where the church stance is. We are really not like a psycho institution that says no to this, no to that, no to this. But no, it's deep down, we don't want people to be objectified. We want everybody to be loved as a person, isn't it? So if you're chasing after pleasure only, then you're using the person as an object. So I think these are good conversations to have with your friends and family. But of course, you pray for this opportunity. You don't go around like, hey, let's talk about this. Of course not like that, right? So yeah, I think this was really quite one line that really moved me. Then, of course, there are other topics, there are other episodes that this letter writes about that, Jesus even addresses the woman that was under bondage by Satan for 18 years. He called her the daughter of Abraham. There's really no other way that they would address women as daughter of Abraham. Yes, they will say sons of Abraham, but never daughter of Abraham. So when Jesus said that, I think it was also quite like revolutionary. Okay, so yeah, and then we move on to motherhood and virginity. And this is something that, again, not well understood, but this letter provides very, very in-depth explanation. And we must now then think about these two particular dimensions of the fulfillment of the female personality. You're either a mother or a virgin. It's pretty like that. And it's so close to our hearts, isn't it? And so you see this two dimensions being fulfilled in Our Lady, right? You can either be one, but Our Lady was both. So she's really like, what do you call that? Wonder Woman, isn't it? And to us, it may seem mutually exclusive, but these two female vocations were united in her in a very exceptional manner, and in such a way that one does not exclude the other, but incredibly complemented it. So Our Lady really is the person to go to, you know. She helps everyone. There's really no way a woman cannot relate to her as well. And to see how these two paths of the vocation of women explain and complete one another in her life. And we go back to this line in Vatican II, right, that wrote, "The likeness reveals that man, who is the only creature on earth which God willed for itself, cannot fully find himself except through a sincere gift of self." You realize that I'm going to repeat this a lot. A sincere gift of self, give of yourself, you are a gift. Okay, so this is really something we need to understand. That's our mission, right? And as women, how do we understand our vocation in order to fulfill this gift of self mission? And so, motherhood is the fruit of the marriage of union, right, between men and women, which brings about, on the woman's part, a special gift of self, because in this spousal love, when they are united in two, they become one flesh. And this mutual gift of the person in marriage opens to the gift a new life and a new human being, which then is also created in the image and likeness of the parents. So in this special openness to the new person, it is precisely the woman's part in this openness in conceiving and giving birth to a child. And I've not given birth, so I don't know, but when I see my girlfriends pregnant, it really is super exhausting. Like, I had one friend that told me, it's like being hungover for 9 months. I was like, oh my goodness, 2 days hungover and to die already. But yeah, you know, they really give of themselves, isn't it? And this openness that they welcome and they bear for the child. And in this interior readiness to accept and bring into the world, is really a mutual self-giving of the husband and the wife for the child. And what I'm about to say in the next few slides, to me, was really something that my main takeaway for this letter. Eternal mystery of generation, which is creating life, okay? Because God is constantly generating life, is then reflected in the women's motherhood and the men's motherhood. So they, in this image of God, is also able to create life. And what the letter writes further is more interesting. And it's a point that many people have missed. I think in our society, we need to scream this out loud. I'm just going to read off, okay? Although both of them, together as parents, are of their child, the women's motherhood constitutes a special part in this shared parenthood. And the most demanding part, parenthood, even though it belongs to both men and women, the mother and the father, is realized much more fully in a woman, especially in the prenatal period. It is a woman who pays directly for this shared generation of the life, right? Which literally absorbs the energy of her body and soul. That's why my friend felt hungover for 9 months. It is therefore necessary that men be fully aware that in their shared parenthood, he owes a special debt to the woman. This is a statement by John Paul II in this letter in 1988. Till today, I think it's not understood well in our society. So no program of equal rights between women and men is valid until it takes this fact fully into account. We are always talking about gender pay gaps, for example. Oh, why are men paid more than women? Yeah, okay, sure. Women are not as disagreeable as men. We don't fight as hard for our pay to be more, right? And then everybody talks about this like equality of between men and women. But look, if you don't take into account this part where we bear children, you know, we give of our bodies and our lives and our time and our being, our soul, our energy, then there's really no conversation. Like I had a friend who talked to me, she said, I don't want to have children, you know, because that would mean that I have to take maternity leave and then I will miss the opportunity of getting promoted and moving up the ladder. Okay, fair enough. But yes, that's why companies don't take into account how amazing it is that they are going for maternity leave. I mean, personally, even I'm in a team of women in my corporate world, and when one of my colleagues got pregnant, my boss went like, Unfortunately, she's going on maternity leave. I was so angry, during that meeting. This was pre-COVID. And I just really blurted out. I shouted at my boss. It was quite rude. I said, how can you say that? I said to her, look, I'm very happy I prayed for this, okay? I prayed that she get pregnant. So it's really sad, right? That, taking maternity leave is like being persecuted. Yeah. And I think it's really unfortunate that people don't get this. That if you want to talk about equality, consider the fact that we can bear children, then talk about equality. Can you? You cannot. So, and this is written in 1988. I mean, back then, no internet, no nothing. How amazing. He saw this as well. So I think, have this conversation. And I think at the end of the day, your takeaway for this, I hope, is to be strengthened, to have good conversations with men and women, especially people who are able to make decisions for the family, for the corporation, for the business, for the organization. Yeah. And not penalize. And that's why, feminism came about. Okay, feminism came about in the early 90s where they were fighting for women's right to vote, to work, to live like normal, like do this very basic thing. But the continuous wave of feminism that came along, the second and third wave came along after that, was a little bit different already. They decided to package motherhood as something that was evil, that was stopping them from fighting men in their lives, in their career. So that's why contraception came in, abortion came in. I want to live like the whole entire narrative of like the Western culture. I want to live my life like men. So it's no longer about equality, it's being uniform. And they don't really look at the part where the women complements the men. And I mean now, it's quite funny when they say like, oh, the cabinet in this should be 50% women, oh great. But actually it's by merits, actually, yeah, really. You should see who is qualified. It shouldn't just be that. I don't need your pity points either. So I think we're all trying to figure this out in society, especially when you are in a secular society and they don't talk about God. And they don't talk about you made in the image and likeness of God. If everybody understood that, it's very easy really. So have those conversations with your friends. Talk it out, and be able to dialogue, because we don't have very clear answers here, especially for the secular world. But we know we have a good guide by the church. Yeah, so really this feminism thing can be another topic. In fact, you can sign up for other talks. Because it's really very sad that they made motherhood like a poison or a virus that stops us from progressing in this world. Anyway, that's another topic. Okay, we move on, okay. So then besides motherhood, Our Lady is also known as the Blessed Virgin. And her virginity is for the sake of the kingdom, which is not talked about much these days, isn't it? Virginity is almost like you still a virgin, You hear people like that, and I'm like why cannot? So it's not as precious as before, isn't it? And I think in this culture where there's a lot of pressure to give in, to experience, and then you give up something so precious. So, and then, okay. So then, where is this? Matthew. He writes, right? In the conversation between the Pharisees, Jesus gave this answer, and the disciples replied like that. If such is a case of a man with his wife, then it's advisable not to marry. Because he said no to divorce, right? Then he said better not to marry. And Jesus says, yeah, it's true. Better not to marry. Because there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. There are people who have decided to devote their lives to celibacy for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. And it is then a voluntary celibacy, chosen for the sake of the kingdom of heaven as a person understands his or her vocation to union with God. And then Jesus adds, he who is able to receive this, let him receive it. So we need to understand the call to celibacy. It's not like I want. It's actually a grace from God as well. Right? A grace from God with your nature and your decision to make this call and to make this vocation and to fulfill the will of God. And it is a special sign of the kingdom of God to come because it serves as a way to devote, right, all of one's life to all the energies and souls and body during our earthly lives exclusively for the sake of the coming of the kingdom. So, okay, I mean, in Opus Dei, there are different types of members also. There are people who are married with children, and then there are people who are single who have decided that, okay, yeah, I want to give of my time. The commitment for all of us is the same. But when they decide to say, I'm going to devote my entire life to be completely available to the mission of Opus Dei, then yes, they have decided that singlehood is their vocation. And it's incredible. There are so many members of Opus Dei who have declared, well, I mean, declare is a very loosely word to use, who have decided this is their vocation, and they are so mobile. I had a friend who needed to start an Opus Dei center in Vietnam. She quit her job here and just go over. That's it. No family what, right? But we need people like that. So singlehood is also not to be shunned upon, like left on the shelf. Nah, it's a decision. And if this is your vocation, this is what you're cut out for, that's really the most fulfillment that you'll get, right? The happiness that you'll get. And actually, this entire virginity thing needs to be understood in the context of the Old Testament as well, because it was foretold by Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, that the Son of God will be born of a virgin. So everybody, if you think that, okay, singlehood is for you, you are trying to unite yourselves to the coming of the Messiah, isn't it? So this call to celibacy for the sake of the kingdom is really strongly connected to the incarnation of God, if you think about it. Okay, and that's where it came from. And so as a path, virginity as a path for women, on which we realize that womanhood, that our womanhood is a different form away from the path of marriage. And by freely choosing virginity, we realize that the personal value of our own femininity by becoming a sincere gift for who? God, right? 100% to God. A gift for Jesus, the Redeemer of humanity and the spouse of souls. So it's a union with Christ completely, okay? And I mean, those of you who have boyfriend, you understand what? Sometimes you got boyfriend problems. It's so distracting already from your own family, from your own mother. So when we really give of ourselves, we understand if this is your call. I mean, you've met people who have totally give of themselves in, like, whether it's being a nun, whether it's being really a call on its own. They live with such joy. So it really should not be shunned upon. And I think it's very sad when we ask young girls to discern, right? And then they get so scared. No, I don't want to be a nun. Hey, please lah. You really think you can be nun, man? You get what I mean? And I think everybody needs to go to discern. It's like you do jobs, you go for interviews, you want to see what field you want to be in. So therefore, in your vocation of life, if you're considering marriage, consider also the call to singlehood, to what convent or anything, right? And if you want to explore Opus Dei, come. We can share with you what our vocation here is like. And if it's yours, if it hits the target, that's it. You're good to go. And it's so happy to live life knowing clearly what your vocation is. Okay, so, and we need to understand that it cannot be just understood as, oh, not married, and I'm single. But really, it's not restricted to a no, I don't want to get married, but a very, very profound yes in the spousal order to Christ. You're saying, I do to God. Okay, so I think that's really something we need to teach everyone, young girls especially. And then, of course, we see a very different type of motherhood for single women. And not so much on raising our own children, bearing our own children, but reaching out to everybody, spiritual motherhood. And it's really something that then this hits it hard home, right? As you did it to one of the least of my brethren, you did it to me. So then you're living for Christ as well, isn't it? And that's how Mother Teresa was the spiritual mother to so many people. She didn't bear them, but she bore them spiritually. And those of you who have got children, oh my goodness, sometimes you cannot sleep when you know they're going through a problem, right? So this is something that we need to understand, that we're all called, all women, we are called to have a sense of motherhood for the people around us. And if you don't sense it yet, just put yourself out there. Interact with your friends who have children already, or older friends, And I think the beauty of our Catholic Church is we are not restricted to only one age group. We know so many people of different age groups. So some people whom have already have many children, go help out. I mean, I babysat my friend's kids before. Although I made them vomited during the evening I sat on one of them and they threw up. So yeah, I mean, and then you experience this, right? You're like, oh my gosh, such respect for you. I don't know how you do this full time. So yeah. And then I think that's the beauty of us, Communion of Saints. We have so many good friends and family in this big church. And so yeah. Then, okay, this part. Okay, we only have 5 minutes left. Oh my goodness. The church. I'm just going to skim through this part, okay? We all know this. This is a very, very common wedding verse. And he talks about men, the wife need to submit to the husband is the head of the wife. Then goes on to this part to say that husband loves your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So by Christ calling himself the bridegroom and loving the church, the order of love is such that Christ died for the church, gave himself up completely for the church. Therefore, husbands need to do that. They need to love the woman first, and then the woman is the beloved, in order to give love in return. So, that is, I'm just going to skip through. The order of love, really. And for women to understand that, and for husbands and men to understand, and if you have sons, when you raise sons, help them to understand that. The respect for women, not just respect, but you need to love first. Just as how Christ loved his church first and he loved till the end. How did he love till the end? Christ is the bridegroom because he has given himself, his body has been given, his blood has been poured. And in this way, he loved the church till the end. And that's what a husband is called. Men is called to do that for the women. And, if that is missing, then that's where the insecurities of us women come about. The inner core of a girl, a female, a woman is, am I lovable? And if the husband or a man does not do that for her, this insecurity will scream out. And you will constantly question, why am I not lovable? Am I not pretty enough? Am I not good enough? Am I not wealthy enough? Am I not da-da-da? Yeah. But for men, it's different. Their inner core being, right? The question is, am I capable? Can I do this? So even, this is just a side digression. When you communicate with your husband or your boyfriend, very, very careful to not say things like, you're lousy, you cannot do. Useless. That hits the core of the man. And because innately they want to be able to provide. They want to be able to fix things. They want to be able to do things for you. But innately for a woman is, am I lovable? Am I worth it? Right? So really understand this. If you get married next time, if you choose this passage from the Ephesians, know it. Meditate on it. It's beautiful. And so the dignity of women here is measured by the order of love. The order, what is the order then? Men needs to love us first. And we're not saying we're weak or what. But it is just the way we are created. That Christ gave such an amazing example of how he loved the church. And only a person can love and only a person can be loved. So love is in the nature and ethical requirement of the person. The person must be loved since love alone corresponds to what the person is. So in this order of women, I hope we understand that sometimes if you don't get the love from men, it's okay. Because ultimately, your mission is entrusted by God, by you, to really be in this world to bring life. But your source of love should also come from God. And I know of a person whose husband cheated on her multiple times. I said, how are you dealing with it? And the husband always comes back and says sorry. And she said, you know what? I just told God, this is your son's problem. My husband is your son. You deal with it. She constantly goes back to God. And she didn't call off the marriage. So it's pretty interesting. And the children still live together. Everybody's together. The husband repented. So I'm not saying that everybody should do this. I'm just saying that, wow, the power of a woman when she commits herself totally to God as well. So I mean, these are all texts here that you can read off in the letter. And then he talks about the fight ultimately between, in the entire history from Genesis to Revelation, is really from Eve to Mother Mary, right, was a constant reflection of us humans, men and women, to say yes or no to God, isn't it? Like Eve said, no, I'm going to eat the forbidden fruit. Our Lady said, yes, yes, be it done to me according to your will. I'm your handmaid. You do whatever you want with me. Yes, for everything. So really, when we reflect on our role in women in the history of salvation, we see many great women in the Bible, right, that really constantly live their lives for God. And that's how we need to now, continuously in this history of salvation that continues in our life, to say yes constantly to God. And know that our femininity is our strength, our motherhood is our strength, and not to be allowing the secular narrative to put that down. Like, oh, you're too girly. No, oh, yeah. Because now you realize that even in marketing campaigns of brands, they like to use androgynous looks. It's no longer a feminine woman, it's a feminine man. I mean, okay, I get it, you want to reach out to all people for sure, but at the end of the day, if you are a girl, let's all dress up like girls, right? I mean, it's okay to go grunge once in a while, or go goth, I'm fine, but it's very important to exude your sense of femininity out there for the world to see as well. And then, of course, the perfect women in Proverbs 31, becomes a very irreplaceable support and a spiritual strength for everyone in your family, within your friends, in your office. Because I think us women just generally take more note of very good details to allow people to have a better experience of the atmosphere, or more sensitive to feelings and things like that. And I think that's a superpower. You have to know it. Okay, and at the end of the day, repeat this to yourself whenever you feel that you question, what's my worth? Here Jesus says, say this to you, if you knew the gift of God that you already have as a feminine woman. And I think ultimately, let's go to Our Lady, because she's really the one that has to show us how to live our lives, and she is a model of the church in the matter of faith and charity, and how she lived perfect union with Christ. And we go to her for this grace, so that really, when we see God face to face, we have our angel calling us, hey, Adel, full of grace. So let's hope and pray for that, okay? So thank you so much. I'm going to end here, and can we just end with a glory be? Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. If you want the slides, I can send you. Yeah. Maybe you can just, I don't know, can I give you my number? Then you text me. I can WhatsApp you my slides. Okay, so I encourage you to read the letter. It's very chim, very, very chim. The whole time I was lamenting, because I have a picture of John Paul II in my room. Then I was reading this, I was like, hey, why? It's so difficult. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.